over the last 10 years or so, my dietary lifestyle has changed. It's actually changed quite a bit. At first, I cut out all red meat. And that was about 10 and a half years ago now. And then a little time passed, and I decided to cut out milk, all animals' milk. Cow, goat, sheep, no more milk. And then a little time passed again, and I decided to cut out the fish and the chicken. So now that I cut out the chicken and the fish and already the red meat, what was I called? A vegetarian. And then a little time passed once again, and I felt compelled to start cutting out other animal-based products. The butter, the yogurt, the eggs, and then finally the cheese. And once I cut out all of that, then what was I called? Then what was the label given to me? I'll wait for it, or I'll say it now. Vegan. I was considered a vegan. Now I understand this label when you go out to eat, because it conveys the message to the waiter and the kitchen staff that you don't eat any animal-based products. But when you go to a party or a social gathering or even a family event or a holiday where there's new people around or even some close relatives, and the topic comes up, because you know it will, because most of the time there's food at these gatherings. So when they ask if you're vegan and you say, yes, I'm vegan, the next question that always follows is, well, how long have you been vegan? My short answer is about 3 years. I don't know the exact date, the exact time from when I started to be a vegan to now. And I'll get to that. But the long answer is a lot more complex. It's a lot more thorough, because it's really not as easy as saying, oh, it was 3 years ago. And I'm telling you this story because I really want to talk about the idea of labeling. You see, I'm given that label of vegan, but that's not the whole story. That's my dietary lifestyle in a nutshell, very compact, concise answer. It makes it easy for people to understand my diet and what I eat and what I don't eat. But that's the thing right there. It makes it easy for other people to put you in a category, to put you in a small confined box. Oh, Kyle, he's a vegan. I can understand it better now. It's easier for them to wrap their head around that concept. And that happens with a lot of labels. With a lot of labels that people give to other people to help them understand better how that person functions, how they act, the way they talk, the way they live their life. Their lifestyle is better understood when we give them that label. So when we label somebody, it's just easy for us to look at them and say, oh, I understand now. But giving those labels, putting those people in certain categories, is putting them in that box. And when you put that person in that box by giving them that label, you're really limiting your capacity to broaden your judgment of this person. You think of them as, like, I'll use me for example, as a vegan, so that's what you associate that person with. So anything that deviates from that box, from that label, is hard for you to comprehend or understand. So like I was saying before, my short answer for being a vegan is 3 years. But to be completely honest, within those last 3 years, have I consumed animal products? Yes, I have. When I've traveled, I tried cheese when I was in Corsica. When I was in Italy, I tried a little cheese. And when I was on the coast of the Mediterranean in Corsica, I felt the urge, I felt compelled to try the fish. So what did I do? I tried the fish. And did I feel bad or upset about trying it? No, I didn't feel guilty, because in that moment, I wanted to try the fish. Because if I did allow myself to feel guilty, it wouldn't be because I thought I was doing something wrong. It's because I would be worried about what other people would think. You know, another example, when I was in Mexico, I tried, I think it was crickets. Yeah, it was crickets, and they were like roasted and then had salt, lime, and hot sauce on them. And I posted a picture, and somebody was like, "Aren't you vegan?" And I'm like, "Yes, I consider myself a vegan. I don't consume animal-based products." And yes, this was a living thing, but I was also on vacation, and I felt the urge to try this out. So I tried it out with no sense of shame or guilt or wondering how I would be judged. So I did it, and I enjoyed it. But when I came back to America, I wasn't going out looking to try roasted or sauteed crickets. I wasn't going searching to eat any animal-based products. So for the most part, when I travel, I might try something that's native to the place where I'm staying, or I might not. It's how I feel in that moment. And that's what's so hard about these labels. Because when we label somebody, it makes that person that label, and that's it. When it's more complex than that, when it's much more intricate than that, a label can seem quite concrete. So when you designate somebody as such, you know, I use myself saying a vegan, but someone's liberal, someone's Republican, someone's Democrat, someone's gay, someone's straight, someone's bisexual, someone, I don't know. There's so many labels out there. But when we label somebody, then we put them in that box and it becomes concrete. And it's hard for us to allow ourselves to think that that person can be anything else. And if they are, and if they deviate from that label, then something's wrong. What happened? And when the person that's being labeled may try to explain why they're doing something quote unquote out of the box or not of the norm of their label, then they're looked at as different, or they're looked at as somebody that's not towing the line, or, you know, doing as they should be under that label. And that's where we all have it wrong. That thinking about labeling and putting people in a certain category limits our perspective on other people. So yeah, I can say I'm vegan for 3 years, but it's much more complex than that. Yeah, somebody can say, oh, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat, but, you know, I'm conservative on these issues and I'm liberal on these issues. You know, there's much more to the story than just that label. That label just makes it easy for people to grasp or to wrap their head around how that person might live their life, or what they might vote politically, or who they date. But it makes it tougher, it makes it harder and more difficult for us to see that person as anything else. And when we limit our perspective on another person, then it's hard for us to ever see them as more than that, as someone that can be different, or that can do something or think something outside of that box, outside of that label. And don't get me wrong, labels can sometimes be effective. Like I said, at a restaurant, if you have dietary restrictions, or if you have a quick conversation or not a lot of time and you need to try to convey to somebody, you know, what you eat, what you don't eat, your political views. But when we really allow ourselves to have deep, meaningful conversations with somebody else, then we can truly realize that this person isn't just that label. They're not just a Democrat or a Republican. They're not just gay, straight, bisexual, transgendered. They're not just a vegan or a vegetarian or a pescatarian. They're more than that. That label might tell part of the story, but I'm sure it doesn't tell the whole story, because that label could be concrete. And as human beings, our lives are fluid. Every day is something different. Our thoughts change, our opinions change, our perspectives change, our outlooks change. So what we were a year ago might not be what we are today. We might not think the same way we did the day before than we do today in this moment. So that label is very tricky. It's very hard to maneuver around when we have it stuck in our head that this person is this, so they need to act accordingly. Or this person is this, and they need to eat accordingly. It's just very limiting. So we need to get out of that habit of associating these labels as concrete, as being in a box, and anything outside of it makes this person not that label, when they're really not that label. It's just something we use to make it easier for us to understand how this person is living their life, or how this person chooses to vote, or how this person chooses to eat. So don't fall into those traps. Use those labels effectively. They can be a starting point. They can be a launching pad for us to have a conversation. Take the time out to dive deeper, because that label is very surface level. We want to dive deep into this person's complexities, the intricacies of this person, because we're all complex beings. It's not that simple. It's not black or white. A lot of us live in that gray area as far as what we believe in, how we live our life, what we choose to eat. So when we figure that out, when we allow ourselves to look at people in that way instead of just a label, then our perspectives, our views, our thoughts on other people will broaden. We'll be able to look at everything as a whole picture and not just a small box. And that doesn't just take the limits off that other person, it takes the limits off of our thinking towards these other people. In reality, when we go ahead and label somebody else, we're just making that judgment about them. We're judging them. It's a snap judgment. And we're all guilty of it. We all make those judgments. We all slap those labels on somebody without even thinking it all the way through. And when we do that, we limit our thoughts about that person. We don't allow them to express who they really are, because in our mind, we already formed our opinion about them. They're in that box. They are that label. They are that judgment. So what we need to do is be extremely mindful and aware when this happens, and not allow ourselves to go down that path of judging and labeling. Because like I said, labels, it's tricky. Labels can help us, but at the same time, they could harm us. They help us understand to a certain extent who somebody is, or what they do, or how they eat, or how they live their life. But we also need to understand at the same time that that label isn't all of that person. Like, that person is not that label and that's it. There's a lot more to that person. The label is surface. What we want to do, what we want to strive for, is to get to know this person below that surface on a deeper level. And once we can do that, then all those limiting factors, those limiting thoughts will dissolve, and we'll be able to truly, truly understand who this person is and connect with them, because all those borders and barriers and challenges and obstacles that we might have constructed because of those labels will be broken down. And then that's where the real connection happens. That's where the real growth happens. That's where you can actually sit down in front of another human being and get to know them and move those labels to the side. I honestly don't think we'll ever move away from labeling other people. It's just something that is ingrained in us, just like those judgments. But similar to those judgments, we need to understand that people aren't always the labels that we give them, and they're not only just that label. We need to dive deeper. We need to break down those barriers, those limits that we might put on our thoughts, and really get to know this person, because they're way more than that label. We may think of them just according to that label, but I guarantee you, if you spoke to them and truly got to know them, you would realize that that label is just a small part of their life. And it might not even define them that much, but it's easier sometimes to just use that label to get through life. But we need to really try to focus and pay attention that labels aren't everything. And we can use them, but don't let them define another human being. Don't let that be the end-all be-all of that person, because that might just be a small piece of the bigger puzzle. Before I go, let me make this suggestion. The next time that you go out, whether it's a work function, a family affair, any type of social gathering, and the opportunity arises where somebody uses a label to define a certain part of their life, or when they say something, you ask, oh, are you such and such, and insert a certain label there. Instead of just leaving it as is, ask them why they use that label. Or at the same time, you can ask them, is that the whole story? And I'm willing to bet that it's not. I'm willing to bet that they've had to explain it over and over again, and instead it's easier for them to just use that label, when in fact they're much more than that label. That label is only a piece of the story, and it is up to us to ask, what's the other parts of the story? What else is going on? Because then we'll be able to get the whole opinion, the whole story of this person, instead of just what that label might convey to us. Because it's usually going to shortchange that person and how complex they are. And then we'll only see that person in that certain light, in that certain box. So use that time when you interact with somebody at this social gathering to really investigate, to really understand why they use that label, but also what else goes into that label. Are there things that contradict that label? Because we'll get a better picture of this person and we'll get to know them better, instead of just saying, oh, this person, they're such and such, insert label there. I'm not sure you can tell from the video, but it's starting to rain a little bit harder now. And the temperature all of a sudden started to drop. It's a lot colder out now. You can definitely see my breath. It's cold. So on that note, I'm going to wrap this one up. But before I go, I want everybody to have a blessed day. I want everybody to have an amazing day. Always remember to be grateful. Be grateful for this moment. I'm grateful for this moment, even though it's cold and it's raining. I'm still grateful because it's this moment. It's the moment where I'm here right now, and it's this moment where I'm alive. So I'm grateful for it. But I think it's time for me to go inside, like I said, because I want to take this moment and bring it inside where it's warm and not raining. And smile. Always remember to smile. I'll talk to everybody soon. Have a good one.